Good morning. It's 10:30 a.m. on September 2nd, 2023. I'm going to show you something right now. Something very important to me. It is President Charity Colleen Crouse's Presidential Archive. We're not going to go in chronological order, but I will say there have been three casualties. Casualties of weather, conditions, the environment. So let me go ahead and honor the fallen. And I'll do that first, starting with President George Bush. Unfortunately, what we have in our archive from President George Bush ended up succumbing to the weather. You see that? That's mildew. Now, it doesn't mean that this is not still available as archival material. However, due to the inclement conditions, this did mildew. So now we've got a situation here, right? You can see there is mildew in this book, and unfortunately, there's also mildew in the book beneath it. Christmas at the White House. Fascinating book. This features pictures of the manners in which mostly the first ladies under the administrations of various presidents decorated the White House for Christmas. There you can see First Lady Barbara Bush. Unfortunately, though, this book has succumbed to mildew. Doesn't mean that it can't still be used as archival material, but it did do something to the condition that, unfortunately, it has mildewed. In the more than a year and 9 months that this archive has been under construction. Third casualty, however, great book. Bam! James Madison by Lynn Cheney. President James Madison, featured by Lynn Cheney. I'll be honest with you, this is a fascinating read. Great book. She's an excellent writer. Some of the research in here is very unique. I've had opportunity myself to cross-reference it with primary source material provided by Dr. Benjamin Rush and find this to be very compelling. However, in the intervening time, mildew has occurred. In this particular item, the Presidential Archive, while still very readable, does have to have some sort of consideration made in conjunction with the fact that it has, unfortunately, succumbed to the weather conditions, and there is mildew. However, there's much more. Let us continue. You see that? That's the president's phone. That's the president's phone, just so you know. This is the president's end table book. 100 Years of Major League Baseball. American and National Leagues, 1901 to 2000. Why? It's important to know that there is also, not entirely unrelated to the reference point of concern, a PBS special, The Presidents. This is multiple more than six discs, 3 different sections, a total of 17 discs, featuring presidents Teddy Roosevelt through Bill Clinton. Now, because of the kind of conditions we're in here at Fort America, I have not had a chance to watch this. This is meant to be watched at a different time with different technological means, but you can see there all of those guys right there. You see them? Right there. Bam. Right there. But I bring this up because of this. You know what this is? This was a pastime that was the preferred means of entertaining former First Lady Mamie Eisenhower. Perhaps you are aware. Have you ever played bridge yourself? At some point in time, a number of these bridge decks ended up becoming available. These are 2 of a number, and as you can see right here, we have The White House Years, a personal account, Mandate for Change, by Dwight D. Eisenhower, autobiography of his years as president, including the discussion about how it is he came to decide to run for president and the early days of his campaign, including through the Republican National Convention in Chicago. But what would a president be without his vice president? And some of you may already know that I have done a thorough and comprehensive review of the first 5 of 6 crises by Richard M. Nixon. Now, for specific purposes, I did end up taking the cover off and putting it inside the jacket. There's a reason for that, including that it's not the only offering from former Vice President and then President Richard Nixon, 1999. Written, by the way, in 1988. Victory Without War. Richard Nixon, right there. And in the spirit of Richard Nixon, could not possibly compile the presidential archive without the means to record my conversations, including here with a cassette recorder with AC-DC converter. As you can see, there's the electric power source, but it also has batteries, and I do have backup batteries, as well as more than 5 blank 90-minute per side cassette tapes. Oh, yeah, that's right. There's another tape in there. I'm not going to reveal it at the time, but I will reveal this one. Elvis Presley, Christmas. Elvis's Christmas, just so you know. Now, one could spend a lifetime just going through the archive as it is now, but some of us, well, we have to keep building on this archive. This right here, this book, Reagan, A Life in the Letters, edited with an introduction and commentary by Kieron K. Skinner, Annalise Anderson, and Martin Anderson, forward by George P. Schultz. Very important. Personal letters, official letters provided between President Ronald Reagan, and others. This is not the same book of letters between Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan that I had before September 2021. This is a different book of letters from the president, Ronald Reagan. But those letters are only some of the papers the president has to concern himself with, or herself. And we have here an edition of both the Federalist Papers, but also the Anti-Federalist Papers and the Constitution Convention debates. Fascinating reading. You know, when you see them quoted, that's one thing. When you don't see them quoted, that's another thing. So let's go ahead and review this archive, just so you know what we have to offer. No particular order, or is it? We have here My Life by Bill Clinton. Just so you know, there's another version of this, another copy of this, but not in the presidential archive. Where is it? Where is the other copy of My Life by Bill Clinton? Moving on. We have 2 offerings here from Barack Obama, including The Audacity of Hope, Thoughts on Reclaiming the American Dream by Barack Obama himself. That's what an autobiography, if I'm not mistaken. This was printed when? Do you remember the printing, the publication of The Audacity of Hope? Perhaps you do. But there is also another book, a biography, The Legacy of Barack Obama, A Consequential President, by Michael D'Antonio. As you can see, those are the 2 books we have in our archive regarding President Barack Obama. Next, we have 1 book in our archive regarding the presidency of John F. Kennedy. There is a separate Kennedy archive, by the way. This is 1,000 Days, John F. Kennedy in the White House by Arthur M. Schlesinger, Jr. Fascinating book. Every time I go to this, it is significant. We also have here, an offering here, Man Unearthed the Archive. It is called Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln by Doris Kearns Goodwin. There's very important information in this book. Some very important pictures, too. Moving on, we have John Adams by David McCullough. Very, very important. Now, this is a more recent edition of this particular book. The original cover and the original manner of presentation of the book by Mr. McCullough is different than this one. This one was republished or reprinted, I guess you could say, after it had been chosen for a mini-series. I have not seen the mini-series, and I have not done as much review of this book yet as I need to, but I do have other references through other presidents and others regarding the presidency of John Adams. Then we get to Thomas Jefferson. Portable Thomas Jefferson. This has primary source works of Jefferson going way back, including while he was in the Virginia legislature, connection with his role at the Constitutional Convention, including in his role as Secretary of State, as well as his role in the executive office of the Vice President of the United States. Very important information, including some of the topics that have been very important, including the Bank of the United States, and the history of the anti-sedition laws in this country, and where Thomas Jefferson stood on that, including officially and publicly on the record. By the way, this book is one, and there's another book that I will not be showing because it's not part of the presidential archive. It's a different collection. It has primary source material that I contend reveals the answers to the question, why did Thomas Jefferson say 12th Amendment in a context wherein now we would understand it to be the 10th Amendment? There was another book here by Thomas Jefferson. This one is An Intimate History by Fawn M. Brody. For the record, there has been more than one version of this book published, more than one edition. This book has several appendices. However, there is another edition of this book that has different appendices than the one in this book. The appendices are very important, and I've evaluated them. I've also found other primary source reference material concerning the topic, the subject matter of the appendices. It's one of the reasons why. Do we know in this country who was the first American that was classically trained as a French chef? Anybody know? This is a very important question. It wasn't Thomas Jefferson, by the way. But we also have this book here, an incredible book by John Meacham, Thomas Jefferson, The Art of Power. This book has a lot of very important information, including context, discuss some of the political matters that Thomas Jefferson was engaged in, including while he was Secretary of State under during the time of the first legislature. And I've actually cited this before. There's other videos where I talk about information. For the record, I saw this book. This is one of those books I saw in the bookstore. At the time, I did not have the means to acquire it. I ended up having available to me the means to acquire it later. So when I reviewed the book at the time, I reviewed it with the intent of being able to have permanent access, and I was able to accomplish that at a later time, including more recently. Just so you know, I've kept the receipts. Moving on, this collection, however, is different. This collection is not supposed to be. This collection was already supposed to be destroyed. All four of these books were acquired on the same day. One of them was featured in a video that I posted on my YouTube the day I acquired these books. Not all of these books are by Donald Trump, but the first one is Crippled America, How to Make America Great Again, Donald J. Trump, published during the 2016 campaign season. Very important information in here, including some of the appendices, including information regarding a tax return, or rather a financial statement that was submitted in regards to a tax disclosure during the campaign, which is important. Why? Because of another book that is in this collection, this one here, Fear. Trump in the White House, Bob Woodward. This book I encountered first in early 2019. It was at the public library. And in the course of encountering this, I did actually have a blog where I posted some quotations from this book on the blog. One of the things he does is he quotes Donald Trump as saying, everything you need to know has already been made public. Now, he didn't tell you where, and he didn't tell you how. Other two books we have here are this one, Inside Trump's White House by Doug Weed. This is an important book. It's got a lot of important information. I have not had the chance so far to read through this and as much as I have the other ones. But in addition to these three books is this one, The Making of the President 2016, How Donald Trump Orchestrated a Revolution by Roger Stone. Who's Roger Stone? Anybody know? What would Roger Stone in this particular book have to do with Donald Trump? Maybe you've heard of Roger Stone in a different manner, an intervening couple of years. Let me tell you, this is a very important book. Among the things he does in this book is he analyzes campaign materials and statements that were made by not just Donald Trump, but also other presidential candidates, including some of their commercials, and analyzes them while also providing details of what they did. Let me tell you, the way that Roger Stone presents the information in his analysis of the commercial campaigns is incredibly important and absolutely relevant right now. By the way, has been relevant in the period between election night and 5 years later, and in a different way between the election night and 5 years and 1 day later up until now. Following through, this book here, a very important book. When I first read this book, again, this was another book at the time I encountered it. I reviewed it with the intent that when the means became available of acquiring it later, and I did. This is Our Endangered Values, America's Moral Crisis by President Jimmy Carter. Absolutely fascinating read, but more than fascinating, it is very important. I've had a very specific relationship with this book in particular for a whole year that I had it. It was a very important relationship. And when I say that, it was even before I actually was able to get the actual book for the archive, and I had encountered the information that I found in this book. It's very important. Very important now, and it has been for some time. Then we have presidency of Lyndon Johnson. This one, it's the years of Lyndon Johnson, A Path to Power, Robert A. Caro. This is an important book because this one talks, among other things, about some of the stuff that happened when Lyndon Johnson was a young man, and some of the things that happened early on, which is a very different kind of biographical accounting than this book here. LBJ, Architect of American Ambition, by Randall B. Woods. This is a very different kind of biography on Lyndon Baines Johnson, and it presents very important information. By the way, most of the references I have for this book are when Lyndon Johnson was a senator. He had a very, very important career as a United States senator before he became President of the United States, in a process that not many people have experienced and hopefully won't be experienced in a similar manner in the future, and yet he was President of the United States. So I've just shared with you a review of the Presidential Archive here at Fort America. All of this is public information, right? All of this was put into the public realm. All of this was available to the people. Almost all of it was intended to be taken out of purview of the people at some point in time for some reason. It's not a donation.